men have more of a solar connection to them and lighting up the world and like doing their, serving and doing their duty and being consistent and responsible. And those are hard things. So, I mean, I don't blame it. I don't blame people. Women that they'll attract, they make choices, and therefore what they attract, because again, it's that whole mirroring idea. But then in a woman's chart, it will show how she makes decisions and how she acts, in her desires and what she loves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. Because I always get this question, and I think last session with one of my clients, they're like, I don't know what to get for my hubby, so I looked at his chart and I'm like, oh, this is what you should get him based on his Venus.
Yeah.
You can totally do things like that, and I think astrology is so powerful in that way. As well, you understand the other person, but I don't want anybody to use astrology as an excuse to not put in effort in a relationship. That's number one. Not do anything about it. And thirdly, it's just not using the information going against somebody in the sense of being a negative way.
Yeah. No, you're barking up the wrong tree if you go for that, and teaching you a lesson there where I don't feel like I even have to, because that's just how it is. I think people that try to use astrology for selfish ways tend to, it just comes back on them, eventually, and it recoils. So don't do that. You don't want to do that. And ultimately, when it comes to studying astrology or practicing this, you really want to do it from a state of loving everyone as the same infinite creation we're all in. And so it does take some degree of spirituality, I feel like, to get really into doing astrology, and that also is a good remedy when it comes to the 7-year itch. I've not had this experience and not been married at all, and not for 7 years. So I can't say, but I know that when it comes to these Saturn issues, it's really, a lot of times, spiritual practices are some of the best ways to do it, to deal with it. And you just try to avoid your duties and just meditate or something. But it means that turning within and checking in with yourself and really, like if you are able to think about these issues that come up in your mind and stop and think on them and try to just be unemotional and just observe them, after a moment they tend to pass, or you feel better about it, you calm down, you know what I mean? And then you don't take it out on the problem. And also, you could do mantras and things like that if you're into that, but there are a lot of ways to deal with it, and a lot of people, don't care to do that. But, or, we all have our own issues, but the main issue is really going and getting, feel you need to. A lot of times people bash therapy, but really I found that as soon as people just start to get therapy, things change, because it's almost like the universe is like, oh, well, he is working on it. Good. We'll let this work. It's like your life. I don't know the answer. Please help me. You know what I mean? And life respects that and appreciates that. And so it helps you find the answer.
Yeah, and it's totally true. The more time that you spend working on it, you actually reap fruit over it. And then that's in a good way, right? But it takes time. Therapy takes time. But the call to action, that Mars, that taking action, that's the masculine part, going out there and doing it. But if you have what you call a sleepy Mars and he's not ready to take charge and doesn't know how to create solution, and he's whining and complaining, that's when you notice those things that you can't take action. And what you really do need is somebody who has what you call a really strong masculine side and is able to solve. And sometimes that could be a therapist, right? sometimes talking therapy doesn't help, but you need a therapist that can actually take action, gives you some sort of steps or strategy or in that area. You know, it doesn't have to be myself. Yes, I have an exalted Mars, and that means I have a really strong masculine. But I'm saying, like, go find somebody who can actually give you steps that actually help you move that barrier, the blockage, whatever you're kind of stuck on, whatever loophole that you're kind of going in round and around and about, right? We can talk about that as well, like what's the difference between talking therapy and different type of therapy, and doing affirmation when it's not working, when especially you're stuck in the situation, right? If you're in an abusive relationship, affirmation is not going to work. No. Definitely it's not going to work. Talking therapy is not going to work right there. You need to get some sort of get out situation and how to do it safely and soundly for yourself. And sometimes that's the first initiative step. Do you not agree, Corey?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's like you're right in that, you know, there's no real one answer for any of these things, and so it's good to bring that point up. But that's what helps so much, to have a therapist that also looks at your chart. Oh, well, you know, you've got this, you've got a debilitated Mars. So just telling you to just use more fire isn't going to work. And the person who has, someone who has a really, really strong sun, telling them to just like go with the flow all day doesn't make sense, because like, no, let me build something, let me create something, you know what I mean? I'm meant to lead, you know, in a relationship, he's not going to want to hear that, you know what I mean? And so you're absolutely right. That's what makes this so great. And I really hope that in the future, and when it comes to my tutoring and studying, I always try to give people to, if you're into studying astrology, to use it together, you know? I mean, even Carl Jung, who was a major psychoanalyst, he studied astrology. And he actually, what people don't know is that Carl Jung did the birth chart of every single client he did a session with. He did their birth chart, and he was using that as like a cheat sheet, you know? And so I hope that in the future, for all kinds of advisors, you know, financial stock market advisors, they're using your chart advisors. I hope that they start to open up to astrology, because there is so much you can do with this.
Yeah, and I totally agree. There's so much that you can actually understand within yourself. And I think it's really important to understand yourself. The more that you understand who you are, the more that you can actually tell the other person who is in front of you and be like, hey, I have this going on. You know, I have a really strong Mars and it's fourth in my moon. So in my head, I have an ideal thing. So when I'm leading, it's because I have that perfectionist. But you can tell that to the other person so they don't get surprised or triggered about it. They're like, oh, she's so demanding. Does she even know that she's doing this? Yes, I'm aware of it. But when you communicate it to your partner, they're more like, okay, this is her tone, this is her mood, this is her thing, right? So I'm going to back off and let her take over, because this is what she feels strongly about. It's just passion, right? Mars is all about being passion.
Yes. Yeah, it's so funny how, and there's going to be that right person out there probably that's going to work just right for you, you know? But it's like how when you study relationships, you start to see like all these little subtleties and intricacies, and but you know, there is a lot of saving grace in there too. And like I said, there's usually nothing. Usually there's enough good things that you feel initially that you don't really focus on it, you know? But then I guess with the 7-year itch, it's like by that time, maybe we've gotten spoiled a little bit, you know what I mean? Or something, or we're sort of like, you know, we're a little too comfortable and too familiar, and we need to kind of almost be, if that husband had to go off to war for a year and then came back, we'd really miss him and really appreciate him. But life is so simple, we almost have too much of each other now. And you know, another interesting thing that's funny, just for astrology, it's funny that they called it like the 7-year itch, like with the skin itching. I know this too, but from a spiritual standpoint, itches have to do with the sign Gemini and Virgo and Mercury,
Oh.
and irritated. And so helps us digest like all of life and sees everything as Vishnu, ideally, or like Mercury is the thing that is able to see everything as God and be impartial and not get too heated up. He's not like Mars, you know. He's like, everything has its place, and is the most mixed energy. He's not idealistic. He's about, no, everything isn't black and white. There's shades of gray. No one's perfect. No one's amazing. Well, anyways, when Mercury is a fake, and so the person has these concepts, and they're like, no, the world is this way. It has to be this way. And then the world eventually doesn't appear that way. And so they get irritated and frustrated. So I actually, whenever people have itching skin issues, I can predict it so easily. And it oftentimes has a lot to do with Gemini. And our ideas not meeting with reality. You know what I mean? And Mercury is like the messenger. Mercury rules the skin. So that middle ground where your inner ideas of what you think is reality meets with reality, and it's not the case. So you acne or boil. That's a symbol of being frustrated psychologically with not being able to accept things and digest life. So that can also be happening in someone's chart, like connecting to this. And that would be a time when you would really want to advise them to develop even-mindedness and to think about your ideas and your concepts, and are they really serving you, or are they just giving you trouble? It's like nowadays, the last year, you know, everybody's been worked up about Donald Trump, you know, venting on Facebook or on the internet and saying ugly things to each other. And it's like, how much does that really help you? You know what I mean? Those people in this situation oftentimes just get more irritated. You know what I mean? They're focusing more on it. And there's sort of that metaphysical idea, something, the more energy and the more it can grow. So when we focus too much on negative things, it can just get worse. And so that would be a time when you would go to someone like me, and I would advise and practices to get your mind off of that and to stop overly dwelling on it and to start accepting life, you know, as not being perfect, having a middle ground, and, you know, a lot of other things that you can do. But yeah, it was really interesting that they call it the 7-year itch, because with digesting life, you know, and you know, like being able to enjoy life while still dealing with the difficulties and not letting those take over us.
Yeah, and it's totally true. It's all about only not digesting it, but also doing the 12th house is all about surrendering.
Yeah. Well, that, yeah, really, that's like another one. Yeah. Surrendering to it and allowing it.
And get into moksha. So surrender, get into isolation, get into inner reflection, your inner world, your inner peace, to get that happening. And it's really interesting, the whole itch part about the Mercury thing. It was quite interesting hearing that from you, for sure.
Cool, yeah, and you know, think about that. Like the 12th sign, Pisces, is where Mercury falls and where he's debilitated and weakest, because that's the hardest for Mercury. So has a hard time letting go of our intellectual ideas of how things should be. And you know, like the world, everyone's always trying to sell us these perfect relationships and Beyonce or this or that, you know, and so out, and that is our Mercury has to do with that too. And so when that's afflicted, it's hard to filter those things out. We have these ideas that we've somehow invested in, you know, and thought my partner's got to be Beyonce, you know, or something, and then be let down. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, you know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have any goals, but filtering them and working on them is really important.
Yeah, and I think, you know, along you really tap in what I call your Jupiter, which is your happy, hippie planet. That's what I tell my client. I'm like, you need to go hang out in nature. You really need to have just be happy, do the gratitude, as simple as that. And it's just a small token. But I think Jupiter is such a beautiful planet, and it's something that we really dictate towards to. And I think Jupiter is such a great planet, but also if we don't understand Jupiter and Venus together is not so great as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So too deep or go too crazy, but Jupiter represents the ideal man, or like your man in a chart. Even if you're in a gay relationship, the positive polarity, or like the more masculine side, is going to be Jupiter, and the more feminine one's going to be Venus. You'll see this so much. And so it's very important to have Jupiter in good dignity. We want to see for a chart. It's not, it's not the end of the world if it's not, but that's a really important thing, because that helps one attract a better man who's just and be a good individual. But when Jupiter is with Venus, that can be a tricky position if you have that like in just a blunt way, but it's not a good placement for a man. if you're going for a man, he might be a little too much of a player, or someone who doesn't really he's gonna be on his mind, and you're not gonna be the only one in his life probably for very long when it's Jupiter and Venus conjunct, which is unfortunate. But it's not always the blanket rule. But let's say, okay, Bill Clinton is an example of someone who has this in their birth chart, and everyone knows about his promiscuity. So anyway, but yeah, I guess to kind of like to round this out with the 7-year itch, it's definitely a thing that on one hand I think is sort of unavoidable. I think relationships with low steam, we're kind of at low tide right now, but that doesn't mean it's the end. That's the time to kind of honor Saturn and honor the fact that nothing can always be perfect. There has to be a night for a day, there has to be winter for summer in a relationship, and just when those come, try to be detached, and we try to freak out too much or do anything too rash in the moment, or whatever. We try to just deal with that as best as we can, making peace with the difficulties. And if you can start to even laugh at it and be like, oh, there's my karma again with this partner, and I always be whatever it is. Like if it's a woman who always feels unsupported, then inevitably that's your karma. It doesn't mean that the world was never made that hard for you, but at the end, so you have to work on that. And so inevitably, I felt that way at times because I have K2 in the 8th, and that can make one feel vulnerable in relationships at times. And so I felt that way, and I've at times blamed it on my partner, or you know what I mean, or sort of wanted more, been too needy when it was my issue that I needed to work. Then there have been times when I've seen that and stopped and gone, nope, I just need to, take a walk or get some exercise or do some spiritual practices and meditate on this and realize this was a silly issue. This was not even an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And laugh it off. It kind of depends on the person in the chart. And that's great to have someone like Cindy who is not just a counselor, but can look at your chart.
Yes, I can totally do that as well. And it's really true. It's like, yes, you're going to get the itch. And the reality is it's going to be really hard in that moment. And you just have to take a break. And I think for women, it's she has to feel good to do good, and man has to do good to feel good. So we talked about how the man got to, if he's a really nice son, you can't tell him to not lead, not to manifest, not to invent. That's not possible for him. But for a woman, her feeling is so powerful. That's her moon, by the way. If you're looking at this in your chart, it's actually your moon. And that's how dictates how you feel and how you react and what position it is. And there's many aspects about, looking at a chart. We can't just say like making a cupcake will only require one ingredient. It's actually multiple ingredients we got to look at to make a cupcake. So I know that, but a moon is very important for a moon, and that's what a man really goes after, really. It's not only the Venus part, it's really how she feels about herself, how central that she is. You know, men are all driven by logic. We all heard of that scientifically as well. And women's all about feeling, how she feels about herself. And she's in the gut feeling. She doesn't have logic in the sense like she doesn't need to know. There's a gut feeling. That's her gift. And if you are so, what do you call a masculine woman, you're overriding that. You're overriding your own gift.
Yes, that's absolutely true. You're right. You're so right. Yeah, and that's what we see a lot in, I think, modern society, and probably what a lot of your practices help learn, at least this here in America and everything. It's like go, go, go. It's all hyper masculine, you know? And only recently, in recent years, have women started to kind of the more moon, the lunar side, the inner side, and start noticing that. I mean, just as a trend, you know, but there finally is starting to be more of an emphasis of like self-care, you know, when women go care of themselves, you know, and that just, ladies, y'all just need to know that the more you do that, the more irresistible you become to us, you know what I mean? And so continue doing that. Because, like, that's what men love, a woman that doesn't need a man, really, and realizes her own inner divinity. And that's all connected to the moon and that self-care. And like Ernst talks about in the moon, it's said to be intelligent, but the moon doesn't even need to be intelligent because the moon is all-knowing because of its intuition, its feelings, and its emotions. And so it doesn't need to, like, logically figure out the puzzle and slice this and that and all that. No, it just, if you're a woman or anyone, even a man, you have this part of you, but as a woman you have an advantage here because you have more of this connection. You have to stay with that and honor that and listen to that, and that will help you. That will help you in, like, especially with relationships. And yeah, that's a very important point.
That's so interesting that it's hearing it from a man point of view. Ladies, if you're actually listening to this, he said it first, and so did Ernst. So we're just we're just telling you what we have heard for decades and years. So you're hearing it from a man. So if you want to be more desirable, it's all about taking care of yourself. You didn't hear it from me. You heard it from him. I just guide him there.
It doesn't mean like, it doesn't mean like being narcissistic and obsessed with yourself, though. That, you can see a little bit of that, like, going on in people, whatever. But you have to honor this. And also, in the same way with men, I've noticed this in my own life a lot of times, and we talk about this, like, guys often talk about this, how the less a guy cares about me to attract them, and when a guy's like really, really lonely, really desperate, they don't seem to find someone. It's because they're not doing what they need to be doing in their life, like you said, because men have more of a solar connection to them and lighting up the world and like doing their, serving and doing their duty and being consistent and responsible. And those are hard things. So, I mean, I don't blame it. I don't blame people. The sun is a cruel planet. The one's not doing their job and screwing up. But yeah, that's an important factor for men too. So if you're a man watching this, then make sure you are doing what you need to do, and you're king first before you go looking for women.
That is so true. Yeah. Yeah, and Harvard did a wonderful study why men marry. It's because for sensual and sexual stability, and women marry for financial stability and status.
Yeah, so that is crazy. That is like, there's so much you could talk about with astrology with respect to that, Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree with all that principle, what you're saying as well. I'm just backing it up with science here, because if people are not understanding astrology, here's science. How do you support that? Here's another angle of looking at it. Here's astrology, and I see that in all different point of view. And I think it's very true, because a man needs to run his kingdom. If he's not running his kingdom, then who is he?
Yeah, and that can, men can oftentimes express like that's their frustration in a relationship, is she's not letting me do this, And if the way you can see that in astrology is if the sun is starved by Venus, or if it's in a sign of Venus. It's like, yeah, the sun, even Jupiter being starved in Venus too, those can have to do with that, where the man might be it might be his fault because it's in his chart. So he might be allowing that to happen on some level too, when he needs to do something else with his kingdom. He might be just projecting it and blaming it on the partner, like we were talking about with the mirror stuff. But yeah, that's a very important the other end of it too, which the person can be too overly focused on themselves. So it is there is a lot of subtleties to this stuff.
Corey, I think we're running out of time. I hate to end this. I know you have a couple of words that you want to tell about your audience and how to find you. And do you have any last saying in this planet before we kind of disappear, before Mercury comes in?
Yeah, not really. I'm during this eclipse period, and with Mercury retrograde, it can be a little bit chaotic. It can be, you can have to make some compromises at times. So I hope everyone makes the best out of that. And yeah, maybe another time we can talk more about things which really require a whole nother video, a whole nother hour probably to talk about. And yeah, you can reach me for readings at eyeoftheveda.com. My name is Corey Dowds, and I'm a Vedic astrologer, and I've been practicing professionally since, and a yogi as well. And I also do tutoring, and I have a YouTube channel. I think that's everything. All right, cool.
How can I find you on YouTube?
Oh yeah, type in EYE of the, and then VEDA. Veda is like the word for this knowledge in India. It's like to know the or Google my name, you should find me.
Yeah, I think you write enough article that it kind of shows up. So if you are looking for a reading, go to Corey. If you're looking to help out the yogi, the mindset, and things like that, go to him. If you're looking for relationship advice, maybe find a therapist. If it's not me, find somebody else. If Corey can help you out in the relationship department, that's also great, but get a second opinion, because it's so important to have a second opinion, and I don't want you to be alone. We talked about, if you're the person who really hesitates taking action, I think that's where you come to us, so that we look at a second point of view and we can actually direct you where is the next step of something like that. So if Carl Jung did that as a cheat sheet, so we're just his little ascendant student. I'm just part of Ern's student, and Corey's from Ryan, and we all come from the same place. We all came from the same place, and we're here to help you, support you, and to make this journey as smooth as possible. And we want to do that in a healthy way. And yes, Mercury is retrograde. So if you are in a relationship, just be mindful how you communicate with your partner through technology. And sometimes it could be miscommunication. And it's just a period of time. It's just a testing period. And things will go back to smooth. And, you can always go back to that text message and really analyze it in a different time and really just move forward as much as you can.
Yeah. Well said.
So if anything else, you can definitely click the link below. You can check out my website. It's www.CindyKing.com. And my YouTube channel is AskSindyKing. All right. I'll check to you later. Bye now, everyone. If you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends, because sharing is caring. If you want my help in your relationship or dating situation, you can always book a time with me. Check out the link below. To stay in touch, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell button so you can be notified when I post new videos. Please go ahead, hit the like button, because it encourages me to create more contents like this every week for you. If you have any ideas for a video, please leave it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.